If you have already watched this introductory information, you can skip ahead no more than 10 minutes. Hello, welcome. I am predicting that Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis due to a bird strike into Busch Stadium. In the area code 314, it will be a burning bush, as described in Exodus 3:14, on November 27, 2024. She will be replaced by Michelle Obama, and then Barack Obama will replace Michelle. It is predicted that President Trump will die from a heart attack on December 12, 2024. It is also predicted that Trump's heart attack will be triggered by a directed energy weapon that will target Trump through Bluetooth technology. The components inside the pointy thing that Trump took will facilitate this, and it is believed that when Trump visited Biden at the White House, Trump's Bluetooth MAC address was obtained, which will be used to target Trump with a directed energy weapon. I am predicting that dirty bombs will explode in Manhattan, New York City, and there will be a large-scale evacuation on December 16th. I am predicting that Israel will bomb Iran on December 17th. Israel will nuke and completely destroy Damascus, Syria on December 26th, 2024. It is predicted that after Kamala Harris's death in a plane crash, Joe Biden will appoint Michelle Obama as his vice president. On December 17th, the Democrat Party will use their electoral votes to make Michelle Obama the president-elect. It is predicted that on either December 22nd or 25th, Joe Biden will suffer a stroke. It is predicted that on December 26, 2024, Joe Biden will step down and Vice President Michelle Obama will become the 47th president. It is predicted that on December 26th, Michelle Obama will appoint Barack Obama as the 51st vice president. On January 12, 2025, Michelle Obama will step down and Barack Obama will become the 48th president. His public inauguration ceremony will be on January 20th, 2025. I am predicting that former President Jimmy Carter will die on January 28th. It is predicted that the San Francisco 49ers will win the Super Bowl in 2025. The San Francisco 49ers will win the Super Bowl in the 6th plus 6th plus 6th state to join the Union on February 9th, 2025, and will become the third team to win 6 Super Bowls, which hints at 3 sixes. San Francisco points to Pope Francis, the first of 2 antichrists in Bible prophecy. It is predicted that on April 20th, 2025, there will be an outbreak of monkeypox or Marburg disease or both. April 20th will be a symbolic beginning to a new pandemic. June 8th, 2025, the true Feast of Pentecost in the calendar that watches for new moons, will be the day of the resurrection rapture event. It is predicted that on June 9th, the day after the rapture, the key will open the bottomless pit and fallen angels will cross over into the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the 5th trumpet judgment that is described in Revelation chapter 9, when the demonic realm collides with the earthly realm. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to demons pretending to be aliens, and it is possible that June 9th will be the day Pope Francis will announce that aliens have arrived and have made him the ambassador for the world. This will immediately give Pope Francis, the Antichrist, supreme power over governments of the world. At some point, there will be a massive Mary apparition that will deceive the masses, because all Mary apparitions in history have been demons pretending to be Mary. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to a zombie pandemic and the masses becoming demonically possessed that will be facilitated through the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist and 5G frequencies. June 9th will be a symbolic beginning to the coming genocide politicide in America. I am predicting that singer-songwriter Paul Simon will die on August 1st, 2025. It is predicted that on August 6th, 2025, the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. The reason for this is that Niagara Falls is Noah's flood symbolism, and the barge was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls, symbolic of Noah's Ark. Niagara in the native language means straight, narrow way, and Niagara's Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the CN Tower in downtown Toronto, because Toronto and its tower are symbolic of the Tower of Babel. In a game of horseshoes, the object is to aim the horseshoe and throw it at the metal stick, which is why the Horseshoe Falls is perfectly aimed at the metal stick that is the CN Tower. God is communicating that as testament for those who will live in the 1,000 years of Christ's reign on earth, the geography of North America will, as a result of a massive earthquake, be divided by a body of water from the Great Lakes to the Mississippi Delta. This destruction will be judgment on America and Canada for attempting to divide God's land, Israel. When this happens, the water in the Great Lakes will spill out over southern Ontario and Toronto. I am predicting that a solar flare will erupt on the surface of the sun and send a coronal mass ejection that will hit Earth on August 13th, 2025, which will knock out America's power grid and will lead to food shortages. The hit of the coronal mass ejection, predicted for August 13th, that will knock out the power grid will also knock many planes out of the sky. I am predicting that on August 23rd, 2025, there will be a catastrophic asteroid hit of Earth, which will trigger the eruption of Yellowstone volcano and will cause the volcano in the Canary Islands to collapse into the Atlantic Ocean and send a mega tsunami towards the east coast. The asteroid will also trigger a mega landslide on Hawaii Island that will trigger a mega tsunami that will hit the west coast. It will also trigger the collapse of the Hoover Dam, which will cause a water panic in California, and many other devastating earthquakes. The day of the Lord, the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, Judgment Day, will be on the Day of Atonement, October 1st, 2025. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Make a note right now of these alternative platforms that you can find me on, in case you can't find me later. All right, welcome. It occurred to me that I should make a video as if I were explaining it to someone for the first time, someone that I'm not speaking to through a video. In other words, the inspiration for this video came yesterday after speaking with someone that I recently met and explaining someone who is brand new to prophetic signs and even the God of the Bible for that matter. And just to explain the basic reasons, the fundamental knowledge for how this prediction is known, that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in St. Louis, and furthermore into Busch Stadium on specifically November 27th. So I had an enjoyable conversation explaining to him these very, in my mind, basic things that I have known for a long time, and I think I think this video will serve to be valuable for this reason. It'll give some really foundational understanding here. Now, to begin with, I have known that Kamala Harris. Well, let's start with this first. Kamala Harris I have known that Barack Obama will become the president again, and the Antichrist since. Well, to go back to the very beginning, that would go back to 2008 when I recognized, even before I was a believer and a born-again Christian, that America no longer deserved democracy and that America had perhaps elected its first affirmative action black president. It had also elected its last president. I was quite surprised when Trump became the president in 2017. I didn't think that would happen because of the principle of a people getting the government they deserve. And America clearly no longer deserves a democracy. The founding fathers recognized that a democracy could only be had by a religious, moral people. They said such things. And America no longer is a believer in God and has a fear of God and is no longer there because of that a moral people in general. And it no longer deserves a democracy. And that was reflected in the election of Barack Obama, with the leftist media having been completely ideological and not doing their job and vetting this guy, the most radical. Anyway, let's get back to the subject here. So Barack Obama has been known that he would, after learning about Bible prophecy years ago, it was known that Barack Obama is the Antichrist. Now, Trump came along because Trump is God's trumpet that he uses to trumpet and highlight his prophetic signs. And the big thing that Trump has been trumpeting, essentially, is the coming of the Antichrist, Barack Obama. And if we recall, The rise of Barack Obama began, the popularity and rise of Trump began with his calling out Obama, specifically, for example, his not having been born in the U.S., him being the unconstitutional president, which is a fact. God used Trump to trumpet this. I won't get into that. We're not going to get into details in this video. We're just going to get over some basic information. Now, it was recognized that Biden would serve to make his old pal the president again somehow. That was recognized even before the election, before the shoplifted referendum in 2020. And it was recognized that this would happen through the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash in the autumn of 2020. Okay, it was right around the election time that was recognized. The first big clue was October 17th, 2020. That was a date that was recognized that God was pointing to ahead of time through these connections with the aviation mishaps of Harrison Ford. And then it all came together after what happened on October 17th, 2020, as expected in advance, was the national news story of the explosion in the strip mall plaza at the finish line of a marathon in Harrisonburg, Virginia. Okay, now that date was believed to be October 17th, 2020, was believed ahead of time to be a date for the coming bombs that will explode in New York City that God is communicating. But God combined the two because it was Harrisonburg, and then I had to take a second look at this, why God is communicating Harrison Ford. Well, Harrison Ford is known for his aviation hobby. And the person I spoke with yesterday didn't know this about Harrison Ford. So if you didn't know, Harrison Ford is known for his aviation hobby. For example, he is a spokesperson for the aviation community. He also narrated the IMAX documentary, Age of Airplanes. Now, the big coincidence, which means it's not a coincidence, when I use the word coincidence, I mean it's God communicating something through what people would call a coincidence, because that's what God does. He uses coincidences to make something stand out and be recognized. For those that believe and those that don't believe and don't have the Holy Spirit, that's psychology, the mind is trained to recognize patterns, blah, 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 okay? But, so the thing is about the coincidence with Harrison Ford is that his acting career is filled with him in roles of a pilot. And another coincidence is that prior to his acting career, he was studying to be a pilot in college, but he ran out of money and then got into acting. And then he resumed his passion for aviation decades later. It wasn't until his 50s that he resumed his hobby of aviation. Okay, and then he became a big aviation enthusiast, like I explained. So if you think about Harrison Ford's acting roles, we have, first of all, the role of him as Han Solo as the pilot of the Millennium Falcon. Okay, that's his role in the movie. He's a pilot. Now also, in the Indiana Jones movies, in the second one, the opening scene is of him flying a plane that crashes into Indiana. Well, Kamala Harris, as in Harrison Ford, is of Indian descent, which, by the way, is also hinted at with Indiana Jones. But the plane Indiana Jones crashes the plane into India in the opening scene of the Temple of Doom movie, which, by the way, that's a prophetic name in itself, referring to the Temple Mount, but that's another story that's explained in the Temple of Doom video on this channel. And so that's a plane crash, and it's in India. Kamala Harris is of Indian descent. And then in the third Indiana Jones movie, he flies with his father, Sean Connery, in a an open air biplane, and so that's another role of him as a pilot. But he also piloted the flying car in Blade Runner. Okay, also, there is a movie named 7 Nights, 6 Days, which is a romantic comedy, action, thriller, or whatever, in which he plays a pilot. The plot of the movie is a plane crash. And the character's name is Harris. But not only that, in the movie, Harrison Ford is the person flying the plane. As he explains, it took a lot for him to convince the studios to let him fly the plane in the movie because of insurance reasons. But he got the green light, and he is actually the person flying the plane in the movie. And his character's name is Harris, and the plot of this movie is about a plane crash. Okay, so on a tropical island, and anyway. So Harrison Ford is also known for his aviation mishaps. You might recall how he crashed his vintage World War II plane onto a golf course in California in 2015. All right, that's the most famous one probably of his aviation mishaps. He also crashed his helicopter in 1999. Also, in 2017, he flew his plane coming in for a landing at the busy California, Los Angeles area airport. I forget which one. I think it might be the John Wayne Airport. But he flew his plane just 20 feet above a passenger plane carrying 110 passengers. The 110 is a prophetic number, but this video isn't about details. Well, anyway, also, in 2020, he landed his plane on the taxiway instead of the runway. Okay, and so the FAA investigated him and suspended his license for, coincidentally, exactly 5 months. Because the story on September 24th, 2020 was how the FAA had cleared him and returned his pilot's license. But that was exactly 5 months after his aviation mishap on April 24th, 2020. And that connected to October 17th, 2020, as I'm explaining these aviation disaster signs. There was also another one on July 31st, 2019. That was the crash of the jet fighter in what is called Star Wars Canyon, which obviously is related to Harrison Ford, who played Han Solo in Star Wars. And furthermore, helps Luke Skywalker in the Death Star Canyon. That's why it's called the Star Wars Canyon, because in the climax of the first Star Wars movie, the pilots, including Luke Skywalker, fly into the Death Star Canyon. All right? So, but then also, okay. There was also that July also in 2019, on July 13th, it was Harrison Ford's 77th birthday. And it was the day of the Manhattan Blackout, which was 110 minutes shy of exactly 42 years. And in the Bible prophecy, 42 months is symbolic of the period of the Antichrist. After the New York City blackout in 1977, hence the 77th birthday of Harrison Ford 42 years later. And Harrison Ford's Star Wars career spanned 42 years. And 1977 was the year of the first Star Wars, and on and on. But how that connects to an aviation disaster, well, it doesn't quite, because, there was Hurricane Barry, which instead Barack, because his former name was Barry before he changed it to Barack as an adult. Who does that except an anti-American type of guy? And then, but that's, wind and air and whatever. But also there was the prophetic explosion of the boat on Table Rock Lake, which I can't explain in this video. So let's get off the subject. And so these are the first clues for Harrison Ford. So it all came together, and it was realized, well, this is how it's going to happen. I thought at first that Joe Biden, after the shoplifted referendum, is going to, at some point, appoint Barack Obama as Kamala Harris's replacement after she will die in a plane crash, because Harrison Ford was hinting at all of this. Now, the thing about Harrison Ford is that his two names, Harrison and Ford, are the names of two presidents. Well, actually, three presidents, because the only grandfather-grandson presidents were William and Benjamin Harrison, the 9th and 23rd presidents. God frequently pairs the numbers 9 and 23 in his signs. If you watch any of my videos, you will know this, in order to confirm his signs and connections. One reason being, primarily, is that the Antichrist was inaugurated in 2009, and he is the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. Okay? Also, the mark of the Antichrist is described in Ezekiel, well, the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist is described in Ezekiel chapter 9, and the mark of the Antichrist changes a person's 23 pairs of chromosomes. Okay, now the Antichrist is from Chicago, and there is another famous basketball player who is from Chicago, or at least played for Chicago, Michael Jordan, MJ. The initials MJ equal 23 in simple English gematria. A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. Now, Michael Jordan wore number 23, just like Barack Obama, who is also from Chicago. Michael Jordan also wore jersey number 9, another pairing of 9 and 23. He wore jersey number 9 when he played for the U.S. Olympic Dream Team. The national team hints at the president, the Antichrist of America. In that Olympics, the Dream Team outscored their opponents by an average of 44 points, which hints at the 44th president, who was inaugurated in 2009 and wore number 23. Okay, so that's Michael Jordan. Now, there is another famous basketball player. Michael Jordan is known as the GOAT of basketball, the greatest of all time. In the Bible, the GOAT is symbolic of the Antichrist. Okay, because for one thing, of the ritual that the Jews conducted on the Day of Atonement on the Temple Mount involving a goat. Well, actually 2 goats, because there's 2 Antichrists in Bible prophecy. Barack Obama is the second of the 2. The first of the 2 is Pope Francis. Now, there is another GOAT, though. There is a dispute in the basketball world as to which of the 2 GOATs is the GOAT. The other GOAT is LeBron James, who also wore jersey number 23. Okay? Now, the thing about LeBron James and Michael Jordan is that they are both known for these hiatuses in their careers. Michael Jordan is known for having retired for 1 year in between his 6 NBA championships. He won 6 NBA championships, but they are divided equally, 3 on each side of his retirement year, which I think, if I recall, was 92 or 93. No. It was 94. Yeah. Okay. So he in other words, came back. He had a comeback after retiring briefly for 1 year. By the way, his retirement, the truth about it is that the NBA pressured him to leave the league because he was, the media was discovering the reason why his father had been murdered because it's related to Michael Jordan's gambling problem. And so the media was starting to figure it out. So he was more than just a rock star of the NBA. He transformed the NBA. If it weren't for Michael Jordan, the NBA wouldn't have the popularity that it does today, for example. He transcended even sports. He was a megastar. Okay? So any further development in this story of him and his gambling and his murdered father would have been bad for the league. So he left the league for a year. And during that time, he tried out for the Chicago White Sox baseball team. Okay? There's even a prophetic sign when he played in one game in an exhibition game against the Chicago Cubs. And again, the Antichrist is from Chicago. Now, in that game, he hit a double and got a standing ovation and made the score 4-4, which hinted the 44th president. The game ended at 4-4. It was a tie. It was an exhibition game. They didn't need to go into extra innings, which hinted at the 44th president from Chicago, and on in that game. So I won't get into more details. This video isn't about details. Okay, but during his time trying out for the Chicago White Sox, he wore jersey number 45. Okay? And that's because the reason why he chose 23, he says, is because he couldn't have 45 in college, and 23 was half of 45. I forget the reason why his 45 was his favorite number. But what's interesting too is that 45 is the 9th triangular number, and 23 is the 9th prime number, and God pairs 9 and 23 to confirm his signs and connections, as I explained. Because from the Bible, the number 9 is the most important number in God's signs, because from the Bible it symbolizes God's judgment. All right? Now, so he wore jersey number 45, and when he returned to basketball the following year, the NBA, he continued wearing jersey number 45 for, coincidentally, 23 games. And it was a coincidence. He didn't design it this way, because he changed back to 23 because his opponents were chastising him, saying that this is the same number 23 that we used to know. So Michael Jordan, being the competitive, egoistic guy that he is, he changed his number back to 23 immediately. And then started performing better, actually. That's another coincidence designed by God. Okay? Because he didn't play so good in those first 23 games. Okay. Now, in his last NBA game as a Chicago Bull, he played against the team in the NBA championship from the team from the 45th state, the Utah Jazz. Okay, and 45 jazz is a genre of music that typically involves trumpets, and the 45th president is Trump. There's more to that, but this I'm just talking about Michael Jordan for now. And okay, so let's leave the subject of the 45th president being Trump aside for a second, because it comes from Isaiah chapter 45, King Cyrus, and Trump is God's King Cyrus. But okay, so his last game was against the team from the 45th state. And in his last game as a Chicago Bull, he scored 45 points. Okay? Now, okay, so he had this hiatus and had a comeback after skipping a year. All right? Likewise, the other GOAT, LeBron James, has a similar story. Now, LeBron James is known for, coincidentally, being from Cleveland. He was born in Cleveland. He was born in Cleveland, and he was drafted by Cleveland by coincidence. Okay? And so he played his first years in the NBA for Cleveland. Now, at some point in his career, he made the decision to leave Cleveland. And from what I know, and I'm not the biggest basketball knowledgeable person, he made the decision not based on money, but because he wanted to win a championship. And he didn't think Cleveland could do it, okay? So he decided to play for Miami. And then he played on what was called at the time the team of villains. The team loved to be hated. It was that kind of thing. It was a superstar team, and they did win the championship, but they were kind of hated for it. And one of the biggest reasons was the fact that it was perceived as LeBron James betraying his city, Cleveland, okay? And anyway, an interesting thing about that is there was an hour-long TV special titled The Decision, in which LeBron James was to announce to the world his decision as to whether he was going to stay in Cleveland or move on. Okay? Because he was, his contract was over. He was a free agent. So this hour-long TV special was exactly 7 years after the Opportunity probe was launched by NASA. Okay? And that was exactly 666 days after 9/11, the big warning from God of the judgment and destruction for America, which 666 days later was the Opportunity probe. There's more to the Opportunity probe. This video isn't about details, and all of these things are explained in the other videos, and When the prediction comes to pass that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash, the wise person will recognize that they need to watch every minute of every video on this channel. Well, anyway, the 7 years is relevant because this is the amount of time that symbolizes the period of the end and the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. It is only symbolic. The prediction being made in this video will prove this. I know everyone is talking about a beginning of a 7-year period that still hasn't began. Those timelines need to be thrown out. They are not true. And the prediction will, in this video, will prove this. And believe me, I know far better than you the reason for this prediction that is from God. It is to prove what I have just said. The 7-year timeline already began with many symbolic beginnings of the 7 years in 2017. For example, Trump's presidency. All right? But enough of that subject. Trust me, I know the reason for this prediction. It is to prove this. We had 7 years of signs followed by an 8th year, because of this principle of 7 followed by an 8 in the Bible, the 8th year of destruction, 2025, okay? Well, anyway, what was I saying? Yeah, so the 7 years from the opportunity probe is because America was given an opportunity after the warning on 9/11 to repent. And then 7 years later is the show titled The Decision. What is America's decision? What's God's decision regarding the judgment? After 9/11, America did not repent and turn back to God as God warned through Isaiah chapter 9, verse 11, and all of the parallels that are plain to see and have been highlighted by Jonathan Cahn between 9/11 and Isaiah 9/11. All right? And so America did not repent and turn back to God. Instead, it raced exponentially further away from God. Okay, and anyone that had the Holy Spirit would know about Jonathan Cahn's explanation for these 9 parallels, right? Anyway, so we have the decision. That's LeBron James, okay? So what was his decision? He went to Miami, but then he came back to Cleveland after. He felt guilty. So after he had won his championships, he returned back to Cleveland to redeem himself. There's some symbolism in there, right? Because of the gospel and our being redeemed through Jesus and his returning for that matter. So he came back and won the championship for Cleveland as he intended to do. And in the process broke the Cleveland sports curse, which God designed because it hints at the Antichrist curse, the curse of the Antichrist. Number 23, Barack Obama, LeBron James, right? So he came back and broke the Cleveland sports curse wearing jersey number 23. And that was, in other words, a hiatus. He left and came back, just like Michael Jordan left and came back. Just like how Barack Obama, number 23, has left the White House and will come back. Okay? Now, the only president to serve non-consecutive terms was President Grover Cleveland, which is why LeBron James left and came back to Cleveland. Grover Cleveland skipped the 23rd presidency, which is why LeBron James wore number 23 for Cleveland. Okay? And the 23rd presidency was the presidency of Benjamin Harrison, which is why Harrison Ford. Now, Benjamin Harrison was the grandson of the 9th president, which is why Michael Jordan wore number 9 and 23. So the 23rd president was the grandson of the 9th president, William Harrison, who was the first president to die while in office. He died exactly 1 month after he came into office, on the date 4/4, which hints at the 44th president, who will return to the White House due to a death, the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. Okay? Just like Harrison Ford is known for his aviation mishaps. Now, returning back to Harrison Ford. So his name is of 2 presidents, Harrison and Ford. Well, Gerald Ford was the only president to never have been elected the vice president or the president. He was appointed the vice president after the scandal involving Nixon's vice president, Spiro Agnew. And then Nixon resigned due to his scandal, and Gerald Ford became the president. He was the unelected president. Okay? This is how Barack Obama will overcome the 22nd Amendment, which restricts someone from being elected more than twice. He will be appointed instead. The Supreme Court, there will be a constitutional crisis, but the Supreme Court, which is made up of members who are compromised by the Marxists in their coup, which is why they never ruled on the shoplifted referendum, for example. They will actually, believe it or not, claim that the Constitution is fuzzy on this, is unclear, and they'll accept Barack Obama as Michelle Obama's vice president. Okay, so that's why Harrison Ford. God is using Harrison Ford in his signs for this reason. Oh, and by the way, the aviation mishap on April 24th, 2020, I just learned this a couple of days ago. So I said this video isn't about details, but I'll go into one detail here because I'm having a lot of fun with it because I'm finding it intriguing because I just learned it. Is that it's the anniversary of Operation Eagle Claw, which is when Carter had a covert operation that failed due to an aviation disaster when they attempted to rescue the hostages in Iran in the 444-day Iran hostage crisis, which coincided with the final 444 days of Carter's presidency because it hints at the 44th president. But that's another story explained in the Carter videos. But it's interesting that this Harrison Ford aviation mishap, the most recent one, was on the 40th anniversary of the aviation disaster in Operation Eagle Claw. All right. Okay. So let's back to what I was saying about Harrison Ford. Now, so it was recognized in 2020 that Kamala Harris would die in a plane crash and that Barack Obama would become the vice president. But it wasn't until 2021 that it was recognized that first Michelle Obama would become the vice president, and then Joe Biden would step down. She would become the president, and then she would appoint Barack Obama as her vice president, instead of Biden appointing Barack Obama as his vice president. Okay? That's hinted at with Michael Jordan, for example. There's other examples, but we just want to keep this on target here on the subject. And so Michael is the masculine of, or Michelle is the feminine of Michael. That's why the name Michael Jordan. Okay? So Biden is going to appoint Michelle Obama as Kamala Harris's vice president. Now, okay, so I think there's a good foundation now of how it is, why it is that it is known that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. Now, of course, President Trump was just elected, so there's a question as to what will happen to, how can this be? How can it be relevant that Kamala Harris and her death in a plane crash would lead to Barack Obama becoming the president again? Are we talking about 4 years from now in the next election cycle? Well, no, of course not. God has been communicating clearly, I've recognized this clearly since December of 2019, that President Trump would die from a heart attack. I had no idea until the election how important this event would be, because it is through this that this will all happen. I didn't have any idea that this would be that important. The fact that Trump would die from a heart attack. Of course it would be important. I just didn't figure how, I knew, how legalistic, how it all leads to Obama becoming the president again. Because, of course, if he dies, then, okay, the Conservative Party's out of luck. They got to have a new nominee and all that. But no, it's more than that. He's now the president, or he was just elected, right? But he's technically not the president-elect until December 17th. And the Constitution is unclear regarding what happens if the person elected on Election Day dies between Election Day and when the electors meet on Electors Day, which this year is December 17th. So because of that lack of clarity, somehow the electors are going to make Michelle Obama the president-elect. Trump is predicted to die on December 12th. It is predicted that there will be also dirty bombs or a suitcase nuke explosion in Manhattan on December 16th, the day before the Electors' Day. And that was known before the election, before I knew how important Electors' Day is, this December 16th date. So I guess somehow, maybe in a crisis or something, the corrupt, faithless electors, there'll be enough of them to make Michelle Obama the president-elect. Somehow the left will shoplift another election, but just in a different way this time. I was surprised they didn't do it the same way they did it last time, but when you think about it, it didn't make sense. Because it makes sense that they wouldn't have been able to pull off what they did last time, because this year there isn't the pieces of ballots paper that go into the shipping system. I'm using my words, carefully. Okay, because of the CVD disease, that didn't, and also the fact that people would be watching them more this time, and so. Although, then again, they did shoplift the what do they call it? The midterms in 2022. So I don't really understand why they didn't Well, I guess that it's just because, like I just said, it wouldn't have been possible for them to shoplift the national referendum. They could do the midterms here and there, right? But with different smaller races, but not nationally. That was too much to do it twice in a row. The game would be up for them. They would be caught. But this is how they're going to do it because, well, ultimately Satan is working behind the scenes here, and he knows what's going to happen here. They didn't need to. Trump is going to die. Okay, and then they're going to make Michelle Obama the president-elect. Okay, now, so the next subject here is how it is known that she will die in St. Louis. She will die in a plane crash in St. Louis. This was first recognized in November, prior to November, October, I suppose, of 2022. Let's see. How did it first come about? Oh, yes. God was overwhelmingly pointing to July 26th, 2022. And that was the day of the epic, historic, and prophetic flooding in downtown St. Louis, right next to the Gateway Arch. And in the Bible, judgment symbolically begins on a people at the gate. So that's why Kamala Harris symbolically will die in a plane crash at the Gateway Arch, or next to it. Okay, so there was the flooding in July of 2026, so that provided the heads up regarding St. Louis. I suppose by about September or so, maybe August, maybe October, it was remembered that the movie Knowing, I watched the movie Knowing in St. Louis. I've only been to St. Louis once, well, twice, but basically once. I was staying with a friend, a couple of friends, in St. Louis, and for a couple of months, long story short. And during that time, I watched with them the movie Knowing, which was released that year, 2009. So the movie Knowing is this ministry. It is what is being done on this channel. The character, Nicolas Cage, in the movie gets hold of a cryptic piece of paper from a time capsule from 50 years ago from his son's school, and it's just a sheet of numbers. And it's sitting on the coffee table one night, and he's having a drink after work or something. He's watching the news, and he recognizes that there's a parallel with the piece of paper and the news event. And he starts researching, and he realizes that the numbers are in fact codes for dates and GPS coordinates for these disasters. Well, that's how God's signs are working. It's connecting dates of these prophetic signs that produce these stories that God is able to use to communicate knowledge and information, such as, for example, Kamala Harris's plane crash, right? The full intended meaning of any of the prophetic signs cannot be properly or fully understood without their connections and context with the other prophetic signs. That's the thing that the other people that watch for prophetic signs fail to recognize, right? The meaning from the signs comes from the connections to the other signs. Like if we just had Harrison Ford in an aviation mishap, what does that mean? It means nothing, which is why no one else besides myself has recognized that as a prophetic sign. It's through these connections that something like that was recognized in the first place, how God works, And so in other words, what I'm saying, there's literally countless signs that haven't been recognized only on this channel. And it's not about me, trust me. I just want the world to know, and I don't want to be the only one to know all of this information. That's why I'm under extreme pressure to make sure that doesn't happen. That's my biggest worry. Like it truly, legitimately worries me. I do not want to be the only one knowing all of this information. Okay, but that's what happens in the movie Knowing. He knows what's going to happen. So once he starts recognizing the pattern on the sheet of paper, he is able to predict the event in New York. And I'm predicting the explosions in New York on December 16th. All right. And in the movie, it's a subway explosion, with the subway derails and there's a big explosion in the subway system. Okay. And then there's an evacuation, just like I'm predicting, after the bomb in New York in December this year. There's an evacuation in the movie from the subway system in the area. Okay, but then, oh, you know what? Actually, come to think of it, yeah. I think it's a bomb that derails the subway, if I recall. Wow, that's right. I think it's a terrorism event, just like what I'm predicting. Okay. All right, so then I could be mistaken. It might be an accident, but no. I think it's a bomb that explodes the train. Anyway, the next thing, the thing that Nicolas Cage's character recognizes is the location of another disaster and the date. So he goes to that place, and it's next to a highway. And then as he's there, he doesn't know what's going to happen. But when he reaches the place on the date, a passenger plane falls from the sky, a big jet plane, and crashes right next to him. And he starts rescuing the people from the plane crash. Well, I'm predicting a plane crash, the most significant event in modern history here that will lead to the rise of the Antichrist. Okay? Now, I'm predicting that it will be in St. Louis, which is where I watched this movie, coincidentally. But again, it's not because of me watching the movie Knowing in St. Louis that I recognized this. It was already thought that this was likely the location because of the flooding in St. Louis that occurred in July of 2022, as I just explained, right? Okay, so the final thing, the last date on Nicolas Cage's paper is the date for the coming solar explosion. And I believe in the movie, he knows that it's going to be a solar explosion that will wipe out life on Earth. Okay? And so the plot of the movie is that they're are aliens that are visiting and are ready to take a select number of people away with them to safety. Nicolas Cage's son is selected, but he can't go. He's an adult. Only kids are allowed. This is all a parallel with the Bible. Born again, when Jesus said one needs to be like a child and born again to enter the kingdom. Only certain people will be selected to be in the rapture, Jesus said in Luke 21. In the King James version, pray always that you are worthy of escaping the things that are coming, which contradicts the Nicolaitan doctrine that Jesus said he hates, which is portrayed in the other translations, which say, pray always that you have the strength to escape what is coming, because praying that you are worthy to escape that is coming contradicts their doctrine of once saved, always saved, etc., the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day. If you are a Christian, and even if not, recognize that the most important video on this channel for you is the 23 church signs video on this channel. I'm not going to explain anything more about doctrine right now. All right, so anyway, that's what's also coming. God is communicating in his signs the coming solar flare that will knock out America's power grid next August 13th, 2025. Okay, so it's just a parallel with this movie Knowing. That's what's going on in this video, this channel, this ministry. It is like the movie Knowing. Okay, so now more about St. Louis. So I looked up, so the flooding in St. Louis was exactly 600 plus 600 plus 600 days after the eclipse that went over St. Louis. And the eclipse went over the biggest major city that the eclipse went over was St. Louis. The path of totality. It went over St. Louis. All right, and that's why I thought to see the connection of days, and sure enough, it's exactly 600 plus 600 plus 600 days. 600 is relevant to flood symbolism because Noah was 600 years old when the flood began. Okay, so that's confirmation of that, but also, of course, 666 is the number of the Antichrist, right? Now, that's what, and so also on that day was the Navy helicopters that were left outside because the National Weather Service only provided the base a 12-minute warning before these Sea Dragon helicopters could be taken into their hangars. And it was during a shift change, which made it a coincidence and designed by God that they were unable to get the Sea Dragon helicopters into the hangars. And there's only 30 of them and in inventory, and I think it was, I don't know if it's not relevant. However, many of them received the amount of damage, making it a Class A damage, like millions of dollars. Okay, so anyway, the Sea Dragons are used to hunt for bombs. We're talking about an upcoming bomb, but also the Antichrist is symbolized by a dragon in Bible prophecy, right? Anyway, long story short, I'm getting into details now, but we got that date revealing 144,000 minutes, which is 100 days. And because it's in the Bible prophecy, it's 12 times 12,000, and that was hinted at with the 12 minutes. So 12 times 12,000 minutes later, after the 12 minutes of the warning for the Sea Dragon helicopters. And the helicopters, by the way, God is using helicopters to symbolize dragons in general with their tails. But also, the rotor blades are in a shape of an X, and the two eclipses over America engendered an X. Now, that got us, anyway, 100 days later to November 3rd, and that date was recognized in advance to be exactly 18,000 days after the deadliest aviation disaster in Missouri history, when the plane crashed just outside of the international airport in St. Louis. So that 18,000 days was confirmed by the 1,800 days between the eclipse and the flooding in St. Louis, which I already knew about. Then that date, the flooding in St. Louis, pointed to November 3rd, 2022, which was 18,000 days exactly after the deadliest aviation disaster in Missouri. And so that was mind-boggling confirmation that, in fact, Kamala Harris would die in a plane crash in St. Louis. But then all the pieces came together, and it was recognized that that would be symbolic of it in itself of the eclipse, because it will be a flight path from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles, just like Flight 77 on 9/11, which was a flight before it was hijacked from Washington on its way to Los Angeles. Los Angeles, in God's signs, is a hint at fallen angels, and she will fall from the sky and lead to Barack Obama, the Antichrist, fallen angels, etc. Now, Flight 77 hints at Kamala Harris. 7 times 7 is 49. Harris is the 49th vice president. And it just so happens, and I didn't recognize this until December of 2022. I think it was late December. In other words, long after I recognized her crash would be in St. Louis, but I finally looked it up, and it just so happens that St. Louis is directly in the path of a flight path from Washington to Los Angeles. Flights from Washington to Los Angeles go directly over St. Louis. So it was just more confirmation that, yes, indeed, she will crash in St. Louis. Now, not to get into the details, because all of the late 2022 signs are explained in other videos, which you need to go back and find and watch. But so the flight path will be pointing to the paths of the eclipses, including the first one that traversed over America from the west coast to the east coast, just like her flight path will go from Washington to Los Angeles, the east coast to the west coast. Okay, and the paths of the eclipses crossed over each other near St. Louis, and they engendered an X. And that's why the helicopter sign on July 26th, 2022 pointed to this X. So the eclipses engendered an X over America. Now the X is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. The inverse of the mark of the Antichrist, described in Ezekiel chapter 9, which alters the 23 pairs of chromosomes, like I mentioned earlier, would have been a Tav mark. The Tav letter is the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet. In Paleo-Hebrew, it would have been an X. Now the thing too, actually, I just thought I should explain this. What also makes this relevant and confirms that it's a Tav mark that was used in Ezekiel chapter 9 is that the Tav letter is also a symbol for something, because all of the Hebrew letters are symbols for something. The Tav letter is the symbol for prophetic sign. Okay, that's what it means. It means prophetic sign. It's also, in Hebrew gematria, equal to 400. So each of the letters are equal to a number, just like Roman letters are equal to a number, right? The last letter, the Tav letter in the Hebrew alphabet, is equal to 400. Now, this is amazing because of what is called in astronomy by astronomers the grand coincidence. The grand coincidence is that the sun just happens to be exactly 400 times bigger than the moon and 400 times further away. This is what engenders perfect eclipses. As far as we know, Earth is the only place in the universe from which we can observe perfect eclipses. It's the grand coincidence. Okay? And it's because of these perfect eclipses that we have been able to learn so much about the sun and its surface, because we can, during an eclipse, observe sun-solar behavior, etc. Well, so this perfect eclipse that is associated with the number 400, and by the way, it's not 399 or 401, it's exactly 400, That's also a coincidence in itself. It's an even number. And it's 400 times further away and 400 times bigger, the sun relative to the moon. Now, Genesis chapter 1:14 tells us that the lights in the sky are for prophetic signs, first and foremost. Okay? The two brightest lights in the sky are the sun and the moon. And when they come together, they engender perfect eclipses, making them potentially prophetic signs. In fact, there are many solar eclipses that are prophetic signs, including the one that went over St. Louis. And Kamala Harris's plane flight path will hint at the path of totality that went over the nation and went over St. Louis. Now, this grand coincidence, because of the Genesis 1:14 telling us that the lights in the sky are for prophetic signs, means that whoever created the Hebrew alphabet also created eclipses. Because again, the symbol for prophetic signs is the symbol that is equal to 400. And the grand coincidence is that the 400 number is associated with perfect eclipses. And the lights in the sky are for prophetic signs, as the Bible says. So again, whoever created the Hebrew alphabet also created eclipses. Now, the thing about the number 400 also in the Bible is that it is associated with the king of Egypt who persecuted the Israelites. In the Bible, Egypt and the king of Egypt are symbolism for the Antichrist system and the Antichrist who will persecute true Christians. All right? Who will refuse to take the mark of the Antichrist, which again is symbolized by an X, the Tav mark, which changes a person's chromosomes because chromosomes resemble an X, or an X resembles chromosomes. That's right. Now, X's. Oh, and St. Louis is near the area of the country nicknamed Little Egypt, which is where the eclipses passed over each other. In fact, they crossed over each other over Cairo, Illinois, which is a place that Barack Obama, as a U.S. senator, visited to deliver a speech. Isaiah chapter 31 begins with, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt and rely on horses," which is why American Pharaoh is a prophetic sign, pointing to the king of Egypt, but that's also pointing to Barack Obama, the American Pharaoh. But woe to those who go down to Egypt. It is Isaiah chapter 31:4, in which God describes himself fighting from the air, which is why St. Louis is the area code 314. It also speaks of a roaring lion or lion's roar, which is why Kamala Harris's plane will be brought down by turbulence, which will be symbolism for a lion's roar. Now, St. Louis, again, is near Little Egypt, and that's associated with the number 400 in the Bible, Egypt in the Bible. So that's more of a connection between eclipses because of the grand coincidence involving eclipses and this eclipse that went over America near St. Louis, which is more confirmation that Kamala Harris will die in St. Louis in her plane crash. Now, the eclipses, the one in 2017 and the one in 2024, 7 years apart, were 7 years apart because it's the 7 years of prophetic signs, of warning signs, before the 8th year of judgment, destruction. But this is the 7 years in Bible prophecy in Daniel chapter 9. Okay, so anyway, these two eclipses engendered an X when they crossed over each other over Little Egypt. Again, Egypt, and the king of Egypt is symbolic of the Antichrist and the Antichrist system that will enforce the mark of the Antichrist. And the mark of the Antichrist is symbolized by an X that changes a person's chromosomes. Okay. Now an X, what is an X? It's two straight lines that cross each other at their midpoint. X's are all about the midpoint. Well, there was an X that was engendered over America through two eclipses 7 years apart. So what happened on the mid date of the eclipses? On the middle date of the eclipses, December 14th, 2020, the first American took the thing, the pointy thing, outside of a trial. This was the symbolic beginning of the pointy thing, and God identified it as being the mark of the Antichrist through the X that was engendered over America, over Little Egypt. That's why Kamala Harris will die next to the Gateway Arch in St. Louis near Little Egypt on a flight path that will point to these eclipses. All right, now, why do I believe her crash will be into Busch Stadium? This was only realized some point earlier this year. It is because of Exodus 3:14. St. Louis's area code is 314. It just so happens that the baseball stadium for the Major League Baseball team, where the Cardinals play, because it's been recognized since 2020 that her plane will crash due to a bird strike. If it wasn't 2020, it was early 2021, that it would be the result of a bird strike. But probably it was pretty close to when I recognized, that her plane would crash. It would be like, how is it going to crash? And then I recognized all of these bird crash signs and God signs, okay? So anyway, the Cardinals have been used by God for this purpose too. I'm not going to, again, explain any details in this video. But that's why the Cardinals play in the stadium in St. Louis, because Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash due to a bird strike. Cardinals are a type of bird. Oh, by the way, also on December 14th, 2020, there was another eclipse, and that one went over Argentina, the home of the first of the two antichrists, Pope Francis, who will also be involved in enforcing the mark of the Antichrist. Okay? So, cardinals are also a hint at the Vatican. And also the dirty birds described in Revelation chapter 18, which identify the Vatican. And, okay, so Exodus 3:14 is when God told Moses his name after Moses asked him, "What is your name so I can tell the people of Israel who sent me?" God spoke from the burning bush and told Moses that his name is I am. I am, in Hebrew, is the symbol het. This symbol is the exact same symbol of pi. Pi is 3.14. The symbol for pi is the same symbol as I am, which is in Exodus 3:14. Which is clear proof that the Bible is from God. But this is why Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in the area code 314 into Busch Stadium. It will be a burning bush. In recent months, it's also been figured that she will die, her plane will crash into center field of the stadium. And that's because Paul Simon sang Mrs. Robinson in center field of Yankee Stadium after Joe Robinson died. Joe DiMaggio. In the song Mrs. Robinson, Paul Simon sings about Joe DiMaggio. And Michelle Obama's maiden name is Robinson. So that's how God is hinting at Michelle. Another way in which God is hinting at Michelle Robinson Obama, replacing Kamala Harris after her death in a plane crash into center field of a baseball stadium. Paul Simon is also an avid baseball fan. So all of this and much more, of course, is explained in the Paul Simon videos, which all must be watched when the prediction comes to pass. One last thing I meant to mention earlier, a little detail, I suppose, which I said I wouldn't get into, but also on December 14th, the mid-date of the two eclipses, and X's are about their midpoint, the same day of the first pointy thing for an American, was the day of a 4.4 magnitude earthquake on Hawaii's highest point that was 4 times 4 miles deep. Okay, so Barack Obama is from Hawaii. His name, Bama, in Hebrew means high place. And there's a proper noun, capital B, Bama, in Hebrew that means high place. And this is Hawaii's highest point, Mount Mauna Kea, and it was on its northwest flank. In Daniel chapter 8, it says that the Antichrist comes from the northwest, which incidentally, exactly due northwest of Jerusalem is Rome. One of many, clear examples for how Bible prophecy is very clear and indisputable that the Antichrist is from Rome, the Pope. Okay, it's a mystery how this knowledge has been lost. The Reformation wouldn't have happened had it not been for this knowledge that the Pope is the Antichrist. But it's been conveniently lost in these last days because in order to fool as many people as possible, to deceive as many people as possible. So, okay. And so anyway, that's just, more confirmation, because of course the 4.4 magnitude earthquake, 4 times 4 miles deep, hints at the 44th president, the Antichrist, whose name means high place, because Jesus said in Luke 10:18 that he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. The name Barack Obama in Hebrew means lightning from heaven. Barak means lightning, Bama means high place, which in the Bible is a metaphor for heaven, as for example, it is said that Lucifer fell from the high place, and also the high place is a euphemism in the Bible for the false religious worship that the Jews would conduct on tops of mountains. And in Aramaic, the language Jesus would have spoken, the word for from is O. And so Barack Obama means lightning from heaven. Either Jesus didn't know what he was saying when he said this, or he was revealing, he knew that there would be a famous president named Barack Obama and said this anyway, or he was revealing the identity of the Antichrist. Obviously, the latter option is the only one that makes any sense. All right, so there you have it. There you have a basic foundational level understanding for how it is known that Kamala Harris, or how it became known, how that Kamala Harris would die in a plane crash in St. Louis into Busch Stadium on November 27th. Actually, I didn't explain anything about November 27th because that's details. Other videos explain how it is all of the signs lead to November 27th, 2024. She will be flying on her way home. She'll be homeward bound, like Paul Simon's Homeward Bound song. All right, to her the day before Thanksgiving, which is why 79 days later, or 7 times 9 days earlier, the Yankees lost 7-9, and in New York on the day of the, I'm getting into details now, on the day of the indictment of the mayor of New York, and the game was against the Baltimore Orioles, who play in the Washington, D.C. area, and orioles are a type of bird. This was at the time that Paul Simon sang a private concert in New York City. And the mayor of New York was indicted primarily for alleged corruption for the embassy of the nation of Turkey, which was why or how it was recognized that it would be the day before Turkey Day, Thanksgiving, that Kamala Harris would die in a plane crash, which makes sense because theoretically that would be when she would be flying homeward bound to her mansion in Los Angeles. One thing that I forgot to mention earlier is that Kamala Harris was born exactly 1 year, 8 months, and 8 days after construction began on the Gateway Arch in St. Louis. God uses this number 188, which is what is hinted at here, frequently in his signs, as it points to H188 in Strong's Hebrew Concordance, which is the Hebrew word that means woe, exclamation mark, used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God. Again, in the Bible, judgment on a people symbolically begins at the gate, which is why Kamala Harris, who was born 1 year, 8 months, and 8 days after the Gateway Arch construction began, will die in a plane crash in St. Louis next to the Gateway Arch. Oh, and also, one more thing. It is known that she will die on a Wednesday because Simon and Garfunkel's first album was titled Wednesday Morning, 3 a.m. This album was released the day before Kamala Harris was born. This is a hint at the day before Thanksgiving, a Wednesday, because Thanksgivings are always Thursdays. And so it is believed that it is quite likely that her plane will crash at 3 a.m. on Wednesday, November 27th. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video. And once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.